Hello and welcome to Premier Injuries. Once again, we're talking about the Euros, we're talking about Monday's matches. But before we get into this analysis, I just want to remind you, please do remember to subscribe to the channel. It's free, it's easy to do, just that little click there before the video starts. Also, do like the video if you've enjoyed it and comment down below. Get involved with us, do ask us questions, send us any sort of data or analysis that you want to be done in these videos. But without further ado, let's go into the first game of the day. In the first game of the day, we saw Scotland take on the Czech Republic in what was probably the game that Scotland were hoping to win most. But this was a game where the Czech Republic showed really why I believe that they're the second best side in Group D and have the ability to cause an upset. A well-earned win that will have sunk the Scottish hopes of progression out of the group. Realistically, I'm not too sure if they will make it out at all, not even as third best qualifiers. But the game didn't start well for Scotland even before the ball was kicked off. Shay Adams was benched and Tierney was out with an injury, so they already had to change their style due to these big players out of the side. But looking at the data, it would suggest that the Czech team were lucky in getting 2-0. Scotland outperformed them in most of the attacking metrics, apart from the all-important one, actual goals scored. Schick was on the double. He took the breath away, probably collectively, of all footballing fans across Europe with his sublime second strike. But both of his goals were low XG scoring opportunities. In terms of attack, Scotland had the most shots in the box, most shots, had a higher XG than the Czech Republic. However, I would say that maybe some context should be given that some of the XG was accrued from speculative shots because Scotland had an inflated number with 18 in total. Quite a few of them were shots outside the box, just really chancing and testing the Czech keeper. So that should be looked at when looking at some of this data. And in fact, the team only had 4 shots on target. But it still should be said that Fryers had 2 of the best chances in the game that he should have put away. He'll be kicking himself, and Scotland will be upset with it as well because they had a 0.97 XG value in total. He'll be annoyed that he didn't hit the back of the net at least even once to maybe give Scotland some hope of getting out the group with goal difference or something like that. But Robertson, the team was really reliant on him, and at times I was a little bit confused as well that they were playing a lot down the right-hand side and not giving it to Robertson down the left. He was making bombing runs. He was creative. In fact, he was the most creative outlet for the side with 6 chances created. And that's the most chances created of any player so far in the tournament. But there's only so much that one single player can do. This is a game of 11. He had a 0.35 XA. He did give some opportunities to his forwards, but as stated, they didn't put them away. I think Scotland will be wanting Adams back in as soon as possible because when he was on the pitch, he played really well. He had the most XA from open play of any Scottish player in his limited time on the pitch. He created 2 chances and 1 big chance with his time on the pitch. But again, these are lots of created opportunities. They don't seem to have somebody to put these opportunities away. So it will be a bit of a worry going into the next few matches against Croatia and against England as well. Will we be looking at cricket score matches? I don't know, but in terms of it, I don't fancy the Scottish hopes at all. On the flip side though, the Czech Republic should be absolutely praised for their game. They took their chances, but I would caution against bringing in their attacking players. Schick's goal was fantastic. Brilliant. I think, you run out of words, adjectives to kind of describe it, but it had less than 1% chance of going in terms of XG. So it just shows you how well he struck that ball. But the side were not dominant in this fixture as well. I think what they did was manage the game well. They kind of kept Scotland from shooting really too close in the box, apart from the 2 big Fryers XG opportunities. The rest of them, as stated, were speculative, so they kept Scotland away from their goal. But also Valek, the Czech goalkeeper, the team owe him a big thanks. He had 5 saves, 1.2 XG prevented. Shows that he had a phenomenal performance and nothing was getting past him. And I think for me, the Czech team is probably the one that England need to be most wary of. There's some real quality in that side, but overall they're managed brilliantly as well. They kind of saw this game out. They kept a clean sheet here, and I think that they put in a really good performance that should make Croatia and England, put their heads up and actually think, oh goodness, this is actually a really high quality side. Game 2 of the day, and this one was a real shock to many. Poland 1, Slovakia 2. It was a shock for me how poor Lewandowski was. It wasn't a shock too much in terms of Poland. We kind of covered this a little bit in the build-up, and there was a fantastic comment from one of our viewers as well, kind of explaining that Poland, going into this tournament, sacked their last manager because the team weren't creative enough and giving enough service to Robert Lewandowski. Well, the sacking didn't work. This new system didn't work. Lewandowski was left up top for most of the game. There wasn't much opportunities given to him. But, we're focusing on Poland here first. It is because it was the shock. But Slovakia have to be given praise. They were seen as almost making up the numbers in this group and in this tournament. But they saw this hard game through. They managed it so well. And I think, obviously, the early goal meant that Slovakia had control of the match, but they still had to do it. They still had to boss that midfield, and they limited Poland's chances. But this will be another opportunity for Wojciech Szczesny to forget the first game of a major tournament. This is another kind of howler, another poor performance in game 1 in a tournament that he will want to put to memory as well. I don't know what it is about the first game in tournaments for him with Poland, but also this is not a stat that he will want on his card, but it is there. It's going to last forever. He's the first goalkeeper to ever score an own goal at a Euros. Looking at the data, Slovakia were not dominant in this game. They were a bit lucky. They did manage the game well, and the Szczesny mistake really did let them just kind of play their own football. The 2 goals that they did score had a tiny XG of 0.46. Poland beat them in most of the attacking data in terms of XG accrued. But what I would say is the data also does show that this game was quite tight. And watching the game as well, there was lacking quality. Poland outscored them on total shots, shots on target, shots in the box, but these numbers were similar, and also the chances created by Poland were not vastly more than Slovakia. Both goalkeepers were not particularly busy. Szczesny and Dubravka, in total between the two of them, had 3 saves to make. So it does show that there wasn't really much attacking threat from both the sides. And in terms of it, he was the captain in one of my fan teams. Very, very annoyed with Lewandowski's output. Very annoyed with the way that Poland played, because he was their most owned asset. Hardly any involvement in the game at all. 6 penalty area touches. He had some good movement, but only 3 shots inside the box and a 0.37 XG. He's not going to get you any points with that. It's a real kind of come down from his ridiculous data in the Bundesliga, where he managed over 1 XG per 90. He managed more than 1 goal a game. He was on sensational form, and it does bring into question if he can perform with this Polish team, because that Bayern Munich team was littered with talent. It's not a question of Lewandowski's talent. It's a question of whether they're able to give him any sort of service, because he's so good, but he can't create something from nothing, that just breaks the laws of physics and things like that. He can't be everywhere on the pitch. He can't cover everywhere. He can't create his opportunities too often. And even at times you saw his quality with kind of shots here and there where he was really, really trying, but he was starved of opportunities. The poor performance here really does make me question if I should keep him in my fan team, but there's other fires to put out for obvious reasons with certain transfers that have to be done, and I'm really reluctant to take a hit. It's so costly in this really, really short tournament. In terms of defensive assets, I did say that Poland, Rybus was the only defensive asset I would consider, and in this game he was quite good. He had a 0.43 XA. He laid on the only big chance of the match, but Poland look unlikely to keep clean sheets going forward, Ryber's capacity for attacking output looks poor as well. Just the way that this team are playing, they're going to have some sort of fantastic turnaround to be doing anything at all. And the same kind of has to be said about Slovakia. They're a side I wouldn't look at. None of their assets I would really consider. They played their hearts out today. They did a really good job, and they might make it through to the next stage. But in terms of it, I don't think that there's any assets really there to consider. Then the final game of the day, and sometimes you say save the best to last. Well, not with this one. This was a 0-0 draw, a real kind of boring game for the layperson, but I really enjoyed actually seeing the way that Sweden nullified Spain. They went out there, they did what they had to do. I think this game really showed the weaknesses of the Spain side that a lot of other teams will look at as well. They can't really play against a physical, low block defensive side, and full credit has to go to Sweden for just brilliantly managing the game. They executed the game plan perfectly. The manager's going to be really proud of that. And at times, it looked like they could have even nicked the winner. Starting at the back, Swedish keeper Olsen had a fantastic game with 5 saves, 3 in the box and 1 XG prevented. He was kept quite busy with Spain crafting out some high quality chances, but also Spain were forced, a bit like Scotland early in the day, to make speculative shots because they really struggled to break Sweden down. For me, potentially, this raises interest in defensive options to the side. They're going to be cheap. And looking at the games that they play next, Poland were really poor going forward. Slovakia the same. So I don't really hold out too much in terms of their attacking quality. And for 2 games, it could be worth it for really, really cheap Swedish defensive options. Up front, I have to say that Isaac played really well. I enjoyed watching him. Nifty footwork, created opportunities, and he was the main attacking contribution of the side with 0.57 XA. Berg missed the golden opportunity of the game, which was a 0.62 XG shot. It was actually the best shot of the game. And so interestingly, Sweden almost had the best opportunity to seal the game there. But I don't think Sweden will find too many goals, and so I wouldn't invest in their attacking assets, but maybe next time around they might nick 1 goal. The way the side plays, it just means that the defensive assets are probably the only ones to consider. Spain as well, probably some good defensive assets. Jordi Alba, will come on to him in a second, but the main offering from the Spanish side was these attacking players. A lot of people saw the XG per match, and Torres was one that I was absolutely certain he would do well. Torres himself, going into the tournament, he was probably Spain's best asset, but he was nowhere to be seen today. Oyarzabal was more likely of the two, and we had that kind of debate, Ben and I, about which two of the two you would go for. And he had the 0.48 XA, whereas Torres, on the other hand, had 0.06 XG over the course of the whole 90 minutes. Does make me think, is it a mistake to have him in? Hopefully, with Slovakia and Poland up next, probably less sturdy defences, he might come to shine. But Poland and Slovakia are also quite a tough kind of team that will play deep, that will play physically. And I think that was really what Spain struggled with tonight. And without that kind of play to put the balls in the back of the net, serious considerations have to be made as to whether you keep those Spanish attacking assets in. In terms of defence, I think the team actually did quite well. But I will say that, yes, Torres and Laporte started as the centre-back pairing. But with the disappointment of the game today, there might be some kind of change-up. There might be some other people brought in, so I'm not counting on Torres and Laporte. I don't want that extra heartache of thinking going into another game, are they going to start? We've seen that with Denier. We've seen quite a few of the nailed players that we thought were 100% nailed not starting this week, and I think that adding any more kind of questionable assets into the mix is not something healthy for your team. and probably healthy for your mindset as well, worrying going into the deadline and hoping that they're going to be on the starting 11 instead of knowing that they will. So for me, I think Jordi Alba remains the only pick from that defensive back line, but he's standout. He is really good. He laid on 4 chances for his teammates, 1 big chance, and an attractive 0.45 XA. He was really involved. He was bombing forward. He was involved in so many areas of the pitch, and he looked so good. So kind of going forward with these two teams, as I said there, I might actually consider a Swedish defensive asset, but the Spanish assets are kind of really losing any sort of appeal. It is obviously one match, but as stated, the 2 games are up against Poland and Slovakia, who will play in a very similar style to that of Sweden. They'll do a low block, they'll be physical, they'll cause Spain a lot of problems. And I do think that, going forward, serious consideration has to be made over their attacking assets. Looking forward, probably after this group stage, I wouldn't trust any of their assets at all. Sadly, I have to say that the Spain side seems to have quite a bit of a journey to go before they hit the heights that they had from that 2008 to 2012 period. So that is the final discussion point of today. And just before we end up, I do want to ask, please do hit that subscribe button. We're really loving making this content for you. And do send us in any questions via my Twitter, Ben's Twitter, or on the comments below as well, because we want to help you. If you've got any data requests, then do send them in. But for now, I'm just going to wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you continue enjoying these Euros.